Hello and welcome to Coffee and Catholics, a Catholic women's talk show podcast. I'm Stacy, one of your hosts, and with me I have...
Hi, I'm Alicia.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Lauren.
Hello and welcome to Coffee and Catholics. This week we have a special guest with us. We have Kendra Tierney Norton. Kendra Tierney Norton is the founder and CEO of Catholic All Year, a shop, blog, and apostolate dedicated to helping families live their faith and to keeping Catholicism weird. She is the author of books including the best-selling Catholic All Year Compendium and the creator of Catholic All Year at Home Unformed. She is the mother of 10 children from age 5 to 22. In 2022, she lost her husband of 19 years after a long battle with cancer. Last summer, she married again and gained 4 stepchildren. She and her family live in Altadena, California. They and their home survived the Easton fires that destroyed 80% of the town's structures, and they look forward to returning as soon as remediation is complete and utilities are restored to the area. Thank you, Kendra, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. What did you want to say? I spoke with you about how this we've been doing kind of a series about interviews with women about experiences with loss, how death isn't something that we necessarily have to fear, and that peace that Christ can bring us in these moments. And we just would love for you to share with our listeners about your story with this and with your husband, Jim. So if you would just open us up, just tell us a little about you and Jim's story.
So Jim and I met volunteering at a local youth group in San Diego in 2000, and I think I was 24 when we met. We got married I thought it was quickly at the time. It was about 11 months after we met. 10 months after we met, we got married. We got engaged after 10 weeks. So it was sort of a whirlwind romance, we really, we're excited about starting our life together and started having kids and moving all over the place. But just a couple of days before I found out I was pregnant with our 4th, he was diagnosed with melanoma in a large mole that was on his back. And he started treatment for that, and we went to Lourdes just after the baby was born, after he was finished with the round of medication that was, it wasn't chemotherapy, but it was very taxing. So we went to Lourdes, and he had surgeries and medications, and for over 10 years, for 10 years or so, his cancer was in remission, but was apparently not ever gone. But he was working every day. He was, obviously really, involved in our family life and in the community. But then must have been 2018, he was having a routine follow-up scan, and it was determined that the cancer had returned. And this time, so he started treatment again, but this time it ended up spreading to his lungs and then to his brain. He started having grand mal seizures. He started losing vision, but again, especially through his second experience bout with it, although it was the same. But he started writing a blog that's called Fortitudine, which is he was a Marine Corps officer when I met him, and that's the Marine Corps motto is Semper Fidelis, and so and then building on that, the fortitude, so Fortitudine in Latin is his blog where he chronicled his fight against cancer. I think he really never believed that he wouldn't beat it, but he approached it with a really positive attitude the whole time. He never complained about it. He never said, why me? He was always a man of great faith. But yeah, he passed away at the age of, I think he was 48. Our youngest was 2 at that point, but he was surrounded by loved ones. It was one of those happy deaths that we prayed to Saint Joseph that we might get to have. He received the sacraments. He was surrounded by his loved ones and friends. But yeah, that's the nutshell version.
Well, thank you. I know one question that I always have when I am thinking about what would, going through this experience, like if that would, how I would handle that. Like, what are some things you do to help your children through that?
Yeah, and I think that probably no one can really prepare for, but I will say that some parts of our family culture I think really helped, and especially with my husband being a Marine Corps officer, that this idea of resilience was really important to him, and he wanted our children to to be able to face challenges in life. He wanted them to be able to face hardship and not crumble. And so as he was instructing them on, sports and school, and helping them sort of dust themselves off after they, had failed and, or were sad about something, that it really prepared them. He was really unknowingly preparing them to be able to handle his illness and death. And I've been amazed at how well the kids have done throughout. And none of this was sort of mindful decisions in the moment, but it just was sort of what came naturally to us, or by the grace of God, more likely. But just being really open with the kids, that we never hid his illness from them. We never acted like this was something to be terrified of, because we have that eternal perspective, and we know that God is good all the time, and that no matter what happens, we'll be all right. And of course, we were praying for so long, for so many years, and we were praying that Jim would be healed, but we always prayed for God's will to be done. And I specifically prayed very often for radical acceptance of God's will. And that's what, and I really do feel like that was imparted to the kids, even as young as some of them were. But the older ones had more time with Jim, and more time with his, sort of philosophy of resilience, and of facing whatever God wants to give us. And that we really do believe that he had the sacraments. The last food that he ate was the Eucharist. His last conversation was confession at our home with a good friend who's a priest. He had his last rites. So we have every reason to hope that he's in heaven. And, as hard as it is for as it was for all of us to lose him, and as hard as it is for everybody to live without him, there's a big part of me that says, all right, well, the goal of spouses is to get each other to heaven. So how can I begrudge him having run his race just because God doesn't think I'm ready? That doesn't mean that he wasn't. And that, it just keeps coming back to that for me, that what is the goal of spouses? So, my hope is that, as much as that leaves me here without him, that, my hope is that we did accomplish that together.
I'm so grateful for you coming and sharing your story. One of the things that we've talked about with women that have gone through these similar things, whether with their spouses or their children or their own personal illnesses, has been this peace that passes all understanding that came to them. Sometimes not right away, sometimes not all at once, but it did come at some point. And that struggle, can you talk about what that looked like for you? That peace that we know comes from God when we ask for his help in these incredible trials like this. What did it look like for you the day you found out and going forward in this second bout of his illness? And what would you say to women who are facing similar circumstances?
I think initially what it looked like to me was just kind of my contrary nature. So the day that Jim was diagnosed, I dropped my son off at the little neighborhood preschool that he was going to a couple of days a week. And the teacher, who I did not know very well, asked me how my day was going. I must have been picking him up. Yeah, she asked me how my day was going, and I told her, which, sort of an awkward thing to do, but I said, well, my husband was just diagnosed with a pretty serious cancer diagnosis. And she said, she thought for a moment, and she was trying to be friendly, but what she said to me is, wow, you must be really worried. And I just thought, must I? I'm doing this run through of my situation right now. All right, we've got a place to live. We've got a supportive family and community. We've got medical treatment. We believe in God. Must I be worried right now? And I just sort of had, and it feels like it was just one of those momentary outpourings of grace, right? Where I could choose to accept it or I could choose not to. And in that moment, I said, I've decided I'm going to wait to worry. And that was really my mantra through all of those years. And it has served me really well lately in, other hardships that we've faced. But just to say, all right, the future looks so scary. The future is unknown, and I don't know what it's going to look like, and I don't know how terrible it's going to get. But today, I'm okay. And in all honesty, every single day between that day when my husband was diagnosed with cancer and the day that he died, on that day, we were okay. And it's the looking to the future that can be our undoing, because the unknown is so scary. But it's that focusing on that today we're okay in this situation, in our circumstances right now, it's okay. And to try to focus on that and not on the unknowns, because exactly what I was worrying about did happen. My husband did die, and yet somehow it was still okay that my kids are okay, I'm okay. And even though it's been, there were times when it was really a challenge, that it wasn't a challenge that we couldn't handle, in the moment.
I think that's just so in line with so much of the counsel of our great saints and Mother Church. Today is the moment, the sacrament of this present moment. And this is the grace that God gives us, our daily bread, our daily little bit of choosing that, like you said, that beautiful, just radical submission. And that's just such an incredible testimony. Thank you so much for that. I know I needed to hear that today, by the way. As we face unknown situations, and all of us in our family. Hearing that, are we okay today? You know, it's such a beautiful way to see the world and to see your life.
Well, I think it's also a good reminder of us to live in the moment, because that moment that God gives us is a gift. And so living in that time instead of worrying about all the befores and the afters, but being present. I think it's a good reminder to all of us.
Well, and it is such, it is a temptation. It's a temptation to put our focus on this unknown future. And, you know, those of us who are planners, who want to know, you know, who want order and who want to know, you know, how everything's going to look. But that focus on the future takes us away from the present. And I'm so grateful that we were really, that, you know, throughout, and especially those the last couple of years when things really, you know, were taking, you know, turning towards the end, but to be able to be present with him and be able to love him as he was, and in the circumstances that we found ourselves. I you know, I'm so grateful that I didn't waste those moments that I had with him worrying about what tomorrow was going to be like.
I know each of us have on this podcast, like, we have loved ones that are battling cancer or other terminal illnesses, and not our spouses currently, but we have loved ones that I was looking at. I think I found a blog post that you had shared about the time, like, after Jim had passed away, and a book that you were, I don't know if somebody had given it to you or something, but like it was like Trustful Surrender. But what intrigued me, if you could speak on it, I'll link the book. But what I loved about what you said is that it triggered you and, like, made you angry, like when you first read that. And I just think that if that's kind of like how I am when I read, like, things like that are telling. What's the one we always talk about it on this podcast, the maintaining peace.
Jacques Philippe, yeah.
Yeah, and I always, like, it's the same sort of thing for me. It's like, it always is like that triggered, like, well, you know, how am I going to maintain peace, or how am I going to surrender? Like, I get, like, when I don't want to, and then it's like, if only it was that easy. So could you speak a little bit about what you shared about this trustful surrender that you experienced?
Yeah, it's called, the book is called Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence. And I think the subtitle is something like The Secret to Happiness or something. And it's this tiny book. It was written by, it's two different authors, St. Paul de Colombier, and who was the spiritual director to one of the seers, Margaret Mary Alacoque, I believe. And another priest whose name escapes me now. But basically the gist of it is that, you know, what I thought I wanted at that time, you know, after my husband died, what I thought I wanted was to God, you know, this God who would sit next to me and pat me on the back and say, boy, you know, isn't it just such a shame about, you know, about original sin and how everybody has to die now, and it's just such a shame, and there was nothing we could do? But reading this book that tells me God is in charge of everything, and if I am suffering, it's because God wills it, and if my husband died, it's because that was what God thought was best for him and for me. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but it actually gives God back all of the perfections that we believe that he has. It means that he is not this, you know, standoffish, unpresent God. It means that he is involved in my life, and it means that he knows better than I do what the end of the story looks like. And it means that this is what he wanted for my husband. It's what he wanted for me. It's what he wanted for my children. And I just was so mad at this book for saying that. And, but the more I thought about it, the more I, read about it. It's this idea is supported by scripture. It's also supported by my personal experience. It's what I believe about God. I believe that God, is in charge of day-to-day things. When Jim went in for his open brain surgery, he'd been having brain radiation treatments, but then finally they decided they needed to actually go in there and cut the top of his skull and remove a tumor. And he was blessed with a relic of Blessed Alvaro del Portillo by a priest who was in the room when that same relic was used on a woman who had many melanoma tumors in her lungs, just like Jim did. She was cured like that, and was cured of her metastatic melanoma. As far as I know, is still living a healthy life. And Jim was blessed with the same relic and was not immediately cured. We did not go in there and the doctor said, aha, you don't need the surgery. He walked out of there. That is not what happened for us. And because I believe in miracles and I believe in a God of miracles, and I believe that wasn't what God wanted for our family. And I would not have been able to say that out loud in the first weeks, and even the first couple of months after my husband passed away. But I did always believe that it was going to be. I did believe it was going to be okay. I did believe that God was looking out for us. I did believe that, my husband was still praying for us and interceding for us. But it took a little while longer for me to believe that somehow this was what was best for us.
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it a little bit when you were telling us the story of you and Jim at the beginning, where you're like, I thought that was kind of a short engagement, or it was really quick whirlwind romance, but in hindsight, that's what it needed to be. So it's kind of interesting going back and seeing how God was working beforehand, because this is what you guys needed. You needed that quick, so you had longer time together. And so it's really beautiful hearing you say that, and it even ties back to the very beginning of your all's relationship.
Kendra, it makes me think about each of our lives too, and all these little things about our beginning courtships and the beginnings of our family, and what God, one of the perfections that you talk about God is that he wastes nothing. He wastes nothing. No moment, no minute of family life, no conversation, no experience. All of it is used in the economy of God. And that's been so beautifully displayed in your life. And when I look at my life, I can see that too. And you reminded me to do that today, is to look and think about the ways that, like for you, how this man that you married was prepared as a Marine to build resilience in your children long before they would need it. That's so God. Mm-hmm. That speaks, like you said, to just the incredible wisdom and providence of God. And that is so edifying to me.
Yeah, and that really, I love how you put that, and it does make me think of how much of a sort of through line that was in our story, because and I always tell this to my boys, but the reason that Jim was able to propose to me really quickly is because before he ever met me, he started putting away money from his paycheck every month into a special account for a wedding, for an engagement ring, because he believed that he had a vocation to marriage and he wanted to be ready when that time came. And I love, you hear so many people talking rightly about, you should be praying for your future spouse. But the fact that before my husband ever met me, he was actively saving for me, so that when he met me, he could be spontaneous. And so again, it's that, like, he was planning for me to be able to, to be able to take care of me and then our family. And he continued to do that in this, I hope inspired by God way, where he was preparing all of us to be able to live through his death, to live with his illness and be able to support him and then to support each other. He also built through his, he did talks for the community. He led small groups. He counseled, he through friendship, offered counsel to friends. And after he passed away, this community that he built around us, was so important to all of us, and really made it so much more manageable, because there were so many people who loved him, who helped take care of us.
Is there anything else that you feel like you should share with our listeners about the experience of how to walk through and accompany somebody and your family, your family through losing such an integral part of your family?
So just practical things. The best gift that anybody gave us in that time was my best friend Michaela, who took on the role of organizing the offers of help from other people, because so many people want to help, and it can be overwhelming. So she took on the offers of when people were going to give my kids rides, or when people were going to organizing a meal train. But I have heard of other people who sort of take on that role for a family in crisis, who even come and clean the meal train leftovers out of your refrigerator, because I was able to keep up with it, but throwing away food is so hard for me, and I hate it so much. But then sometimes it builds up, and so then that's one other thing that's just weighing you down, or somebody offered to take your kids somewhere, but I don't remember who it was. And so just if you have a good friend who is facing this, and you're somebody who can handle organizing, that was hugely helpful to us. And then I had a friend who offered to put on the reception, and somebody else who organized the high school kids into a choir to sing at Jim's funeral. And so just all of those little things that people just took the initiative to go ahead and make happen, because people get worried I don't want to bother her or something, but they do want to help. And so that was really great.
I love that. I wouldn't have thought of organizing the help. That's just, I can see how that being such a gift.
Yeah.
Such a gift.
Yeah, it really was. I guess the only other thing that I would say that I was really, that sort of surprises me in hindsight that I made that decision, and I really loved it, was to open up our home. We were able, Jim entered hospice, and we were able to be at home, and hospice came and set up a bed in one of the sort of semi-public rooms in the house. And I faced that moment of they told us it could be weeks, but do I go ahead and tell everybody this now? And I was really glad that I did, and that we were able to have our friends come and visit him. And they were able to say goodbye. We were able to pray together. We prayed so many rosaries. I was so grateful for that devotion in that time, because it's something to do together. But to not hide death, to share it, and that it's something that we really sort of were able to experience with our family and with our community. And it's something that people keep coming up to me now and saying that they're so glad that they were able to be a part of. And I was really glad that was something that we were open with and that we were able to share with our family, but not just with our family, also with our community. And as somebody who didn't grow up with these weird Catholic, traditions of wakes and things like that, that I think that death isn't something that's meant to be hidden. It's, that it's a sacrament, and the last rites are a sacrament, and those are a public practice of the church. So having something having that being something that we were able to share with our community, I think was good for them and was good for us. And it's a decision I was really grateful to have made.
I really, really love that death isn't something meant to be hidden. We have a local home here that is led by Sister Maria of the Trinity. It's called Gospel of Life Disciples and Dwellings, and they care for people who are dying, the poor and dying, or whether they have no place to go, or they took care of my husband's grandmother in her dying days, and several other close friends of the podcast that are associated with them. But that's something that's like that I've seen a lot through there, is that same idea that death isn't something meant to be hidden. Like when somebody is dying, there are people, like whether they have family or not, people are there. They have making sure that there are people praying for them, singing with them. So just hearing you, saying you opened your home and like it wasn't just your family there, it was others that cared, like that, to show that, it's an inevitable part of life, is that we're going to die, we're going to experience death, and that, yes, there's that fear of what truly is next. Like we have our beliefs of like, if this is what it is, but we haven't been there yet. So there's that huge element of faith of what is, of that what's happening next, and then that sadness that you feel of that person is no longer, those left here, they're no longer with you. That's something that we all experience. We're not alone in that. And so to invite others into those moments in your life to share, like, and really see you are not alone. Like, we are not, and for your husband to see that he's not leaving his family alone.
Yeah.
Like you were surrounded by people caring for you. That's just a beautiful witness.
It's probably very peaceful for him to see everyone surrounding you guys.
Yeah, and so when after Jim passed away, we called our parish priest, and he came right over and blessed Jim's body. We also called the mortuary that we had made arrangements with ahead of time. That's shares a wall with the church property. And the people from the funeral home came, and they said, well, we're going to move the body, and mostly families don't want to be here for this part, so you'd probably want to, go somewhere else. And Father Gonzalez said, no, we are staying here, and all of the kids are staying here. And instead of us going in another room and just sort of sitting there and looking at each other and wondering what was happening and thinking it must be pretty bad because they wanted us to leave, no, we stayed there. And Father Gonzalez started the kids in singing the Regina Celli, and they go to a classical Catholic school, and they sing so beautifully. And so they, covered my husband with an American flag because he was a veteran, and we accompanied him, as he left our home for the last time. And I think if Father hadn't have been there, I would have said, all right, I guess we'll go. But I'm so grateful to him for encouraging us to be present and to experience the experiences and be there for it. And it was really beautiful. I I talked to somebody the other day who had lost their sister from a big family at a relatively young age, in her 20s, and all of her brothers went to the cemetery and dug the grave by hand. And it was, I mean, it's just the most beautiful thing. And I think, we had a giant, bulldozer scoop thing, and it was, it really messes with the mood. I love the idea of again, just being as involved as you can, and I think it doesn't make it worse for loved ones. It makes it better. The more you can throw yourself into these experiences, I think the more healing it is over the long term, in my experience.
Stunning.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Throughout the illness and passing of my dad, I was very involved with him. And I stayed, like, it was the same kind of thing, stayed there throughout all the different things. And most people, like, it's the same thing. They're like, everybody leaves right now. It's like, oh, or like at the cemetery when a lot of times before the casket is put into the ground, most people, like, a lot of times nobody stays for that. And I'm like, I need to stay. All my loved ones who have passed away, I understand that each person has their own different level of comfort, but there is that sense of, it's not closure, because it's just it's opening a new life for them, but it's that end of the earthly life, just being involved. You think back to the time of Christ when, the way that they took Mary taking her son in her hands, and them wrapping him and adding in oils, and all the different preparations that the loved ones took care of and were a part of, and how that's part of those acts of mercy that that were called, is that the right term?
Mm-hmm. The corporal works of mercy.
Yeah. Corporal works of mercy, yes, and caring for the dead. And
bury the dead is one of the corporal acts of mercy. Yeah, and absolutely. And I feel like the more we were involved, and the more comfort there was in that. And words like, I like the idea of the only way out is through. That you have to experience, you have to go through these experiences, and somehow I think that that it's counterintuitive, but that it was helpful for me, and it was helpful for Jim's parents and brother and sister and our kids, and that idea of seeking closure is kind of a fallacy, because it's, it doesn't ever go away. It just changes. And I think that not shying away from the experiences of illness and death, I just think equip us to then live with it afterwards.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's living with it. Like you said, living with that afterwards. The grief, the things that you've gone through, they're never going away. It's a part of you now. Mm-hmm. And it's how God can help you, like how you let God help you, how you go through your day to day, incorporating that into who you are now, because you've been changed.
And that we're called to find joy, even though we are carrying this now forever. Yeah. That we still have to, be there for our family, but not just that, but to genuinely praise God, in our sorrows, in our grief, and find the joy that that God calls us to live with, and to embrace the circumstances that we've been given.
Is there one, if you could look back at one kind of one of our Catholic practices that kind of tied your family, really strengthened your family during that time. We had one talk about how the Angelus has been such a backbone for her family. Was there anything that you can say that this was, I mean, of course, everything. I mean, we have the rosary, we have the mass, but is there like one practice that your family has that you felt like kind of unified you guys during all of this?
Oh, I would say two things, but one is just sort of my apostolate of liturgical living in the home was really a family experience, and it's how Jim and I together, we were both raised Catholic, but without any of those sort of traditional Catholic practices, without really a love or an understanding of the saints, and so as we started instituting all of those celebrations in the home, those pious practices that are based around the liturgical calendar, I really found that, as our life got more challenging, more chaotic, more time spent in hospitals and time spent apart, and that those, having those practices that we had done year after year, that we were able to have so many memories wrapped up with. It was very sort of grounding and helpful to us. And I love the way that the liturgical calendar works. And it's, if we had to miss something one year, hey, guess what? It comes back around again the next year. And so it really gave us this sense of sort of continuity and sameness in a time when everything felt like it was changing. But then as far as one devotion that was really important to Jim in particular was adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And when people would ask, can we do a meal train for you? Can we do, how do you need donations? How can we help? And we did use community meal trains when Jim was hospitalized. But the thing that we would ask for is that people would sign up for a holy hour, because that was something that was really a great love of Jim's, was spending time before the Blessed Sacrament, and just intercessory prayer, like prayer that you prayer for others is a gift that I cannot overestimate. It's so important, and especially for families and for individuals that are going through these really difficult times. Sometimes it can be so hard to pray for yourself. Sometimes it's just so overwhelming you can't even find the words. And to know that other people were praying for us, I genuinely believe that that's what keeps the despair away. There's this beautiful children's book based on a fairy tale called the Bearskinner. That's a Grimm's fairy tale. But we have this newer illustrated version of it, and it's this crazy story about a soldier who sells his soul to the devil, and so his pockets are always full of gold, but the rules are he can't commit suicide. It's a children's book. He can't commit suicide, and he can't pray, and he finally finds that the thing, as he starts falling into despair, he finds that what he can do with all this money that he has, the devil's money, is he can give it to the poor and ask them to pray for him. And there's this illustration where he's walking along the river, and he's tempted to throw himself in, but there's all these butterflies that are the prayers of the poor that are keeping the darkness away. And that visual is just like, it's just seared into my brain, because that's what I felt like other people praying for us were those butterflies, keeping despair at bay and allowing us to face our circumstances with faith and love.
That's beautiful.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Kendra. We're so grateful.
This is so beautiful. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And as always, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Join us again in about 2 weeks.
Until then, may God bless you and may Mary accompany you.
Coffee and Catholics is a proud partner of the Smart Catholics Podcast Network. Find new shows to love, meet like-minded Catholics, and join the community at smartcatholics.com.